All right, we are recording, so that is our cue that we're going to get started. Once again, thank you all so much for joining us for today's webinar. From everyone on David's team, just want to extend our gratitude for spending your time with us here today. As many of you may already know, David has more than 40 years of experience as a family therapist, workshop facilitator, lecturer, and advisor to leadership executives from all over the world. He has dedicated his life to helping create more accountable and more authentic organizations, and is a best-selling author and respected thought leader in the leadership community. David is so passionate about helping people connect with the most authentic versions of themselves and seeing the world transform one authentic person at a time. Whether he's leading his academy, hosting a webinar like this, speaking in front of a crowd, or sharing his thoughts through the written word, David is inspired and fulfilled by the work that he does. Today's topic on embracing the power of intention is one that we hope offers some meaningful insights and leaves you feeling inspired about the year ahead. This webinar will be recorded and it will be shared on David's YouTube channel, as along with all the other webinars. I will post a link in the chat room for anybody who would like to access that. And thank you again for joining us. It's always just inspiring, it's encouraging, and it's wonderful to have you all with us. So without further ado, here is David.
Thank you, Kristen. You always make such a difference by your presence here as such a spark plug on our team. Thank you so much for your spirit and energy. Thank you, everybody, for being here and for taking the time out of your busy day to spend with me. Here's how it works. For those who've been around part of our community, you know the routine, but basically I'll speak for 50 to 60 minutes. Some of you have to get off obviously before then, or if you could stay right to the end of my presentation. Many of you jump off on the hour. But if for those of you who can stay, I think I personally find it the most rewarding to have a dialogue with people after. So I stay on after for a half an hour of Q&A and dialogue and discussion, and what people are taking away and what people's experience of this and what people's application of what I present here. So that's very meaningful to me to have a community and a conversation afterwards. So if you can stay the extra half an hour, I will be here for 90 minutes. So on that note, as usual, folks, I'm going to take you on a very personal journey today. I don't just give information. I'm going to share with you what's in my heart. We're going to really do two things today. I want to start by having us reflect on our society. Where is our society going today? Where's our world going? What are the society demands? What's happening in our workplace? I'm just going to ask you to reflect. Some of my reflections after being in this business for 40 years and what I'm seeing in politics. And although this is not a political discussion, I will be asking us to reflect on because I do believe that our politics are a reflection of our inner consciousness. And then I want to spend the bulk of it talking about what does it take to lead a path of an authentic, intentional, sustainable living. And I'm going to emphasize here, it is a path. It's not the path. There are many paths to living an intentional life. I'm going to share with you my path, and I hope that you will find some strength and inspiration. You're welcome from that path. You're welcome to borrow from it. You're welcome to steal from it and make it your own. But my hope is that whatever path I give you, that you will create your own and make it your own so that it's meaningful to you. I'm going to start, probably the seed of all of this was planted by my mother years ago, which I found this little quote in her journal after she passed in 1999. Shine a light on what you desire. Whatever your intentions are, you will find an unseen force, an energy that will move you toward that intention. You can take a look at, we all have intentions, whether we are conscious of them or not. Just look at the results that you're getting in your life. Look at the kind of relationships you have in your life. Look at the quality of those relationships. Look at the quality of your leadership. Look at the quality of the organization that you work in. Look at the environment around you. And what's happening is that you are creating the results that you're intending to create. We all create the results that we intend. So if you're getting the results that you want in your life, know that your intentions are on the right track. And I'm just going to be affirming for you what you're all doing. I might use a different language to talk about intentions, but regardless of the language, you're getting what you want and your intentions are what I call aligned. If, however, you aren't getting some of the results that you want in some areas in your life, then it means that you have an option, that you have an opportunity to learn some things. And I'm going to give you some structure here to learn some things about how to change those intentions and how to live your life by design rather than by default. So the original story of this came, if you read my e-article this month in January, the original story from the birth of this, because my process is I like to write an e-article every month, and I think most of you are on that list. And then my webinar is designed around application and thoughts around that e-article. But the e-article kind of sets the tone. And the e-article started off, the story in the e-article started off by this story. When Ben Hurt Davis's underachieving men's 8 British rowing team came 7th in the World Championship in 1998, they set themselves a crazy goal of winning an Olympic gold medal in just 2 years. What will it take? What will make the boat go faster? It became a fundamental question that guided all the decisions on that team for the next 2 years. The question impacted all their decisions and actions. Will staying up late the night before the regatta make the boat go faster? Will my choice of what I eat at this meal make the boat go faster? Will today's workout make my boat go faster? Will my choices in my relationships make the boat go faster? And so this became a guiding principle that operated each of the team's lives. Now, I relate to this because, and this is very meaningful and very personal to me. 25 years ago, I had a major, significant depressive episode. And I was basically on the couch for about 2 weeks. I could not get out of the fetal position. It was a clinical depression that was stimulated from a variety of, partly it was situational, but partly it was biological. And I really struggled. And I was on the verge of, my wife was on the verge of leaving. I was on the verge of a total breakdown. And I got close to suicide. And it was a very, very difficult time for me. And I entered into a recovery program at that time. Now, what happened was that I looked at my addictive patterns. I looked at my thinking patterns. I developed a process and a program, was given a process and a program to strengthen me. But it was based on one question. My whole life at that point was dependent on one question. And that is, will this decision support my recovery? And everything else became superfluous to that. It's like I came home. I wasn't hospitalized, but I came home from the psychiatrist like I came home from an open heart surgery. And if you've ever had open heart surgery and you've come home to recover, there's only one thing that you need to pay attention to. And will every decision in your life support your recovery? And that's the fundamental decision that I had to make. And every decision in my life. Now, I was running my own business at the time. And I managed to find some structure so that I could keep the business going. But everything was related to this. Every focus that I had was related to my recovery. And it probably was that way for 2 to 3 years. And I didn't grow the business probably for 5 years after this. I really didn't grow my marriage. I just survived. I showed up in the relationship. I showed up with my kids. But everything was based on my recovery. You know, when the word priority came into the English language, it was in the 1940s, in the 1400s. When it first came into the English language, it was singular. There was only one priority. And it wasn't until the Industrial Revolution, when businesses said, hey, we can't just have one priority, we have to have many, that we ended up having priority just in the short couple of hundred years, where it was then pluralized. Pluralized, I don't think that's a word, but it became plural. And so now we have 20 priorities. And you have 20 priorities, the basic principle is you have none. So what is your focus? And I had to make this my focus. Now, once I built that foundation, I built the structure of my life. Then I could build a life on top of that. but I had to go back and rebuild that foundation. So we all are different. We all are unique, and our needs change over time. So I can't prescribe a process that's going to work for all of us. But what I can do is offer some principles that I think that I've learned in the journey. Intentional living is about living your life by design rather than by default. It's the deliberate practice of making your own choices before other choices make you. A New Year's resolution is a wish that will expire. Living intentionally is a way of life, living productively and purposefully with a clear structure and a process of accountability. I don't know how many of you, I think we've become so cynical around New Year's resolutions. My guess is that most of you probably didn't even make a resolution because you know it's going to expire. And if you did make a resolution, chances are there's a good chance that it's expired now. I mean, the busiest time for health clubs and gyms, as we all know, is crammed in January, and by this time it's starting to wane. Okay, so our actions are aligned with our values. That is my definition of living life intentionally rather than by default. Now, by the way, this is just actually an excuse to introduce you to my new granddaughter that was born last year. And I use this as an example because when we come into the world, we are connected to our authenticity. You look into the eyes of a baby and you see beauty and love and truth. And this is our authentic self, what I call your soul. You can call it your soul. We come into this planet with a soul, not a blank slate, but a soul with a destiny and a seed of possibility. But here's what happens. We grow up in a society that tells us how we should be. And so we conform in the world in order to fit in and to survive and to protect ourselves. Far easier to raise an obedient kid than to raise an authentic child that's connected to their soul, because sometimes they're wild kids. So it doesn't mean that they have, that they don't need limits, but in an effort to put limits, in an effort to have boundaries, in an effort to have structure, we inadvertently take on some of the society's rules and demands and expectations. And so what I have in my observation of our world today, here's what our society looks like. It looks like coming from a place of we satisfy ourselves by consumption. Bigger is better, and popularity is what's optimal. And I think I'm asking us all to really examine our goals. How many of our goals today, how many of our intentions, how many of our actions are aligned with what society wants rather than what the soul desires? And so we spend our life giving the world what the world wants rather than really feeding our soul. And it's very easy to lose connection with our soul. So let's just break these down and look at this whole notion of consumption in our world, because what we're going to be talking about now in this presentation is how to align with their soul. That is ultimately what the living a life of intention is. So focused on this, consumerism. Let's just talk about consumerism for a few minutes. This is the world that tells us that we're less than until we buy a product. We don't have enough. And so if you buy a product, then we'll be enough, and then we'll have enough. If you've looked up the word consume in the dictionary, I love to research the origin of words. The word consume means to destroy, to squander, to use up. Whatever we have is not enough. And we begin to get this notion of how much is enough. And I frequently work with groups of CEOs. Many of them are in groups where there's a $5-10 million annual salary requirement to get into the group. And often my question is, how much is enough? And many of these CEOs have never actually stopped and thought about that. The best I can often come up with is a little more than I have now. And so there's this continual pursuit of more. What happens to a society that can now consume 24/7 with practically unlimited credit limit? you know, I grew up in a day, and I don't want to take us back to the good old days, but I grew up in a day where you couldn't buy stuff unless it was during business hours. You couldn't buy stuff on Sundays. Sundays, the stores were closed. You couldn't buy stuff in the evenings. You had to wait until the store opened the next day. And then it was a great thing when stores were open on Thursday night from 6 to 9 till 9 o'clock. And it was such a treat to be able to buy stuff. But here's the point. It does something mentally when we have to wait to buy something. When we can immediately have it delivered by Amazon tomorrow, you know, it's not soon enough, but there's something in our mindset, in our world. And I just ask us to reflect on that. I no longer get impressed by big houses. I've got a friend who's a mortgage broker, and she tells me the pain behind many of these houses, the pain of debt to keep these houses alive. And as I say, when you finally catch up with the Joneses, they'll refinance. So watch what society is pulling you to do, to tell you you have to have this kind of a house in order to have worth. You have to be this kind of success in order to have worth. I don't think there's a person on this call that would tell me that they're attracted to this particular kind of physique. But I'll tell you, I'm showing this because of the epidemic that I'm now reading about and hearing about in my work with young boys, particularly who are addicted to steroids. It's now as cheap to buy steroids as it is to buy protein powder. This particular individual, we really have to be on top of this to educate these young boys about the impact of steroids. This is a guy, Rich Piana. Probably most of you don't know this guy, but he was a well-known, world-renowned bodybuilder. And 2017, his girlfriend's cutting his hair and his heart explodes in his 40s. This impact of steroids is massive in our world today. Growth without limits is what we call cancer, folks. It destroys us. Without the ability to have boundaries and limits in our life, it will destroy us. And I've learned this through the addiction journey. I've learned it from my own experience. As an addictive personality, I understand that freedom is not getting what you want. Freedom is understanding that there are limits, and freedom comes from the discipline to have defined boundaries in our life. So let's talk about the soul. The closer I get to soul, the more I move away from consumption and vigor and popularity to citizenship, to substance, to character, and to service over self-interest. Just stop for a minute. I grew up with John F. Kennedy, and I heard two different inauguration speeches, 60 years ago and then this week. And I wonder where our society has gone in the last 6 years. When John F. Kennedy, he certainly wasn't without his faults, but his whole premise was, ask not what your country can do for you. Instead, ask what you can do for your country. It's a very different intention. I just want you to notice the difference between when you're contributing to your community, when you're contributing to your workplace, when you're giving yourself, rather than when you're consuming and when you're taking. The difference in the attitude. I define citizenship as the commitment to create a better world through the expression of our gifts. My daughter learned this when she was in high school, and she found her gift to be on stage, and she found her gift to sing. And at some point along that way, she gave me a quote that came from her soul. And this is what it said: it's more important to be yourself than it is to be popular. Being popular only lasts until school is done. Being yourself lasts a lifetime. It's easy to be popular, or at least it's not sustainable, is really what I want to say. But it's difficult to know what is yourself. And this is my work, is to guide you to your own self, to that self, and then live your life in alignment with that soul. And what it does is it builds character in your life. Those are the roots that sustain us. It's not the fierceness of the storm that determines whether we break, but rather the strength of our roots. I'm not sure that we have a sustainable mindset in our world today, in this consumption. Is it any wonder that we call this the consumer society? In a consumer society, I'm not sure we're really prepared for those storms. So at this point, I want to give you three strategies for living an intentional life and an authentic life of character aligned with your soul's desire. I can't tell you what those desires are. I can only guide you to find those desires within yourself. Here are the three strategies. Now, again, I'm going to make it really clear. Not everybody needs a structure. If I look at my wife, she would have no need to develop this structure. I have a need to develop structure because I have a sensitive nervous system. I have a propensity toward getting depressed. It's my creative, anxious nature. I have as I say, a sensitive nervous system. I respond well. My mind, my body, my spirit responds well to structure. Not everybody on this call needs this kind of structure. And all I want to say is, if you're finding that this aligns with you, that you can really fit some kind of a structure. Again, this is not the only structure, but if you're not getting the results that you want and it becomes a pattern and you're not really feeling a deep sense of satisfaction with your life, then you might try some structure in your life. And here's one suggested structure that I'm going to go through in the next half an hour. Number one, have a clearly defined quality of life. Number two, have a regular life facet audit. And number three, execute on an ongoing accountability process for closing your integrity gaps. So I'm going to walk you through this structure one at a time, and we'll have some discussion about it after around application. So many of you know I've spoken about the quality of life. I've got this notion from a man named, from one of my mentors, a guy by the name of Alan Savory, who started a movement called holistic management. And these are ranchers that are committed to creating sustainable agriculture and regenerative agriculture by their ranching and farming processes. And there's a few folks on this call today, Don Campbell among many others, who support this work around holistic management. And this is really, I want to give credit to holistic management for coming up with this, but this has been pivotal in my life, pivotal in my life. Typically, folks, we just react to people's demands, and then we squeeze a quality of life into our life afterwards. And what the whole notion is here, define your quality of life, and then how much production is needed to support that quality of life. Your job, your work, your profession, your business is just a tool to create the kind of quality of life that you intend to have and want to have. Your quality of life answers three questions. For me, how do you define success? What do you value? And what drives your life? And I'm going to encourage you to stop and really ask yourself, take some time to really reflect on these questions. However you want to word them, you can change the wording. I'm going to tell you, a good many of you are going to just listen to this. Maybe you're multitasking. Maybe you're inspired by this, and then you're just going to get back into your life. What I'm encouraging you to do is actually stop and see if there's some changes that are needed in your life to re-examine the direction of where you're going. I had to do it out of necessity. You may not have to do it out of necessity. I did it out of pain. How do you define success? If you carefully consider what you want to be said at your funeral, you will find your own definition of success. What do you want to be said at your funeral? What do you want to have people say about you? Not that you focus on your funeral for the rest of your life, but you use this as a guide to say what really truly matters. You'll never see a hearse pulling a U-Haul trailer. You can't take this stuff with you. What really matters in your life? I'll tell you what matters to me is I have a business model that's supported by a guy named Bo Burlingham called Small Giants, companies that choose to be great instead of big. This is how I define success. I define success by a quote that has stayed with me for many years. This particular individual, Dag Hammarskjöld, was a Swedish economist and former Secretary General of the United Nations. He was actually killed in a plane crash in the 1960s. But he's got some very profound principles that have been around for a long time. And he made a principle, he stated something in his life that really aligns with the principle that I stand for around success. It's more noble to give yourself completely to one individual than to labor diligently for the salvation of the masses. Impact the few rather than impress the many. This is really how I define success. Legacy is not what you leave behind. Legacy is the difference that you make now. Okay? Examine your values. What are your values in your life? What really matters to you? Now, there's several processes for going through. I mean, you can list 100 things that's important to you and just play them off like a single elimination hockey tournament and make choices until you narrow it down. But what do you really value? I don't care about your value statements. I really care about what's in your heart. What really are your values? And I think we all understand this Covey's model about the urgent and important and the sand and the rocks, and how you really need to know the urgent are all the pressures that come onto you, the expectations of other people. The important are the rocks that you establish. And if you don't make room, the principle here that Covey taught for years was if you don't make time for the important things in your life, they will become urgent. And if you don't make time for the important, there's no room for the rocks if the sand goes in first. You got to schedule the rocks in first. This is living intentionally. Articulate your values. Now, I'm going to share with you what my 6 values are that are very personal to me. But again, this is, if I just sat, it's taken me years to articulate this. I've really known in my heart what they are. And I know when I get my life out of balance, I misalign with my values. If I get my life out of balance, it will always, and for me, it always surfaces some kind of depression, anxiety, inner darkness when I'm not living my life in alignment with these. So my first value is contentment, living from a place of sufficiency. Now, by the way, I believe that values need to be aspirational, not descriptive. So these inspire me to say, you know what, unless everything flows from my sense of contentment, if I don't feel enough, I'm going to overwork. I get misaligned with these values, but they are a compass that guide my life. Character is the kind of person I'm becoming on my journey. It's what Steve Covey used to teach me, that there's a difference between primary success and secondary success. Secondary success is what you build in your life, what the world sees. Primary success is the person that you become on the journey. Make sure you're becoming the kind of person that's aligned with your soul. The quality of your personal relationships, leaving contribution, leaving the world better than I found it, compassion, bringing kindness to my actions, and curiosity, lifelong learning and sharing. So I review these values every morning, just before I go into meditation in my quiet time, to say, hey, how's my life doing in terms of alignment with these values? When I show up at the supermarket with the clerk, I'm in a hotel right now, and when I talk to the clerk this morning, I want to make sure that it reminds me to bring kindness into my actions. Okay, so those are my personal values, and it's all going to get integrated together in an accountability process here soon. So what drives your life? Does a phone drive your life, or does a compass drive your life? This is society's demands that comes access through our devices. We have so much access to the urgency today. It's very interesting. The person who really introduced that whole notion of urgent and important was actually, and Covey would give credit to this person, a guy by the name of Charles Hummel, who wrote a book back in 1967 called The Tyranny of the Urgent. And he's the one who really defined the difference between the urgent, which pushes on demands that push on us, and the important, which are the demands that we push on. And the whole notion is he made a tremendously powerful statement that we're moving in, and this is before the age of technology that we know today, is that we're moving into a generation where technology would make the urgent so accessible to us that we will lose touch with what really matters in our life more than any other generation has. All right, so that's getting a clearly defined quality of life. Know what your values are. What drives your life? How do you define success? And ask yourself, just reflect on those values. Now, you make those values real by taking what I call a regular life facet audit. So here's what I mean by that. Gandhi said this, that a person cannot do right in one department of life whilst he's occupied doing wrong in another department. Life is one integrated whole. We are a whole being. We can't just compartmentalize ourselves and hurt people in our personal life and then come to work and expect that we're going to be successful in our leadership at work. We're all integrated together. So I have created a little model here. After 40 years of doing this, of coaching people and helping people change, I have 10 what I call life facets in our existence. And you can use different words if you want, but each of these, and I purposefully put them in terms of these wheels so that if you change any aspect of your life, it will change all the aspects of your life, as Gandhi implied. And so every aspect of your life can be boiled down to these 10 factors: inner well-being, purposeful living, knowing that I'm living significantly, that I'm making a difference, your health, your family relationships, your friendship relationships, community, and contribution. And this is where our work fits in. Where do we, our work fits into purposeful living. And then where do we use our work to contribute? Financial stability, play and renewal, creativity, learning and development. Now, you might come up with some others. These are the 10 that I use, and you're welcome to borrow these or come up with your own. But basically what I do is this, and this is what the audit looks like. What the audit does is you put this on a piece of paper, inner well-being, each of these 10 facets. What do each of these mean to you personally at this time in your life? Then you take a number and you say to yourself, how important is this to you at this time in your life? It could change. It could change. For example, if you've got my daughter's a new mom, and although her creativity isn't necessarily important to her right now at this stage in her life, she's and learning and development. I mean, she's not going to courses right now. She obviously wants to keep learning, but it means something different to her now than it would look like 2-3 years ago, and then it might look like 5 years from now. So how important is that? Depending on how you define it, how important is that particular facet to you now? And then you make, and this is the critical part, you in your third column, you say what's your current level of fulfillment in relation to that? And what you're watching for are gaps between column 1 and column 2, or column 2 and column 3. So if you've got a low number, for example, in column 2, to say, okay, my creativity isn't very important right now at this stage in my life, and my current level of fulfillment, it's not very, I'm not very fulfilled, but it doesn't matter because there's no gap. What you're watching for is gaps. Now you're going to see this is my own personal graph that I did this month. My own graph says there are 3 gaps, 3 primary gaps: community and contribution, learning and development, and play and renewal. Now, what does that mean? I stop and I think about that. I'm going to tell you how I learn, is that I learn by writing. And I really am at a place in my life right now where I want to learn. I need more space in my life. So what I came up with are 3 areas, 3 focus areas for this year. And my first focus areas, came out of that gap, is to say, I'm going to write my next book this year. This is going to be a year that I haven't really sat, and I've been writing all the time, but I haven't really made a concerted effort to write my book. I'm going to find an academy partner. So I do these public workshops, but what I've discovered is I'm exhausted trying to fill these. It's hard work. And so what I'm going to be looking for this year is a partner who will take the risk and hire me to come in and do these 3 to 4 day academies. And we'll take the reward, take the risk, and really do the work, and then just pay me. And I have in my mind what that means. And so I have an intention on finding that partner. And then the third thing that I came to realize is that I need to create some space in my life. You know, last year was when I did this audit last year, what I came to when I went through all these facets is what had all to do with the gap around financial stability. Not that we weren't bringing money in, but the burden of the finances in the acreage that we lived with. The kids had left home. We were paying for a house that we didn't need to be in. And last year, the bulk of that year was about downsizing. And many of you have heard my journey about that and just getting rid of stuff and freeing up stuff. Unfortunately, here's what happened is that I focused on that. That was my intention last year, and we accomplished that last year. But then toward the end of the year, I mean, we were finished downsizing and we moved in August. Then we had an extra month to get kind of settled in and basically moved in. And then there was a space, and I got nervous and I got insecure. So I started to take on work, and I started to put my message out into the world. You know what? I'm financially independent now. I don't need to work. So you know what? I'd love to take on projects, and I'm willing to compromise my fee to do projects that I really care about. But I wasn't intentional about about where my boundaries were and where my limit is. And so what I ended up doing is I am so filled with work right now. I'm overworked. It's very fulfilling, but I haven't had a process. I sat when I did this year and said, I'm going to work. I want 50 paid days a year. Well, I have in the first quarter, I've got probably half, if not more, of those days booked just in the first quarter. So now I have to step back and say, you know what I really need to do this year is that I need to step back and restructure my business, because I'm moving into a different challenge in my business where I need to create some space. So these are the 3 themes for me this year. Write my next book, find an academy, and along with writing my book, I need to find an agent and I need to find a new publisher. So I'm just putting that out there that's on my intention list. I need to find a partner in my academy, and I need to create space in my year so that I can visit my grandkids, so that I can spend time with my wife, and so that I can just be where I'm not constantly scheduled. And I have been good about that over my career. You know, we have a fee and we know how many days a year I'm going to work, but I let it get away from me because I let the move kind of take over, and I wasn't really intentional. So I know that I'm going to be sitting with Marg, and we're going to be my VP of client care, and we're going to be working out a structure. I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's the life facet audit. And I would encourage you to just sit down in your own way and just say, where are the integrity gaps? Where are those gaps between what's important and how you're currently fulfilled? So then the third one is now we're going to execute. Now, basically, what I've done up until now is I've given you a formula for a New Year's resolution. And what's going to distinguish between a New Year's resolution and an intentional life is point number 3. It's all about execution. And this is where the rubber hits the road, folks. And this is where I'm going to ask you each, as you start to make an audit and as you start to get clear on what your goals and intentions are in the next year, do you really intend on making some changes? You don't have to change yourself, but what you have to do is make changes. And there's a big difference, and you're going to find that out as I go through this. So this is where the rubber hits the road. Do you want to make changes in your life? So I'm going to just, for those of you who haven't heard my spiel about accountability, I'm going to go back to my fundamentals about accountability. It's the ability to be counted on. Henry Ford, you can't build a reputation on what you're going to do. Okay. Now, this little formula that I want to rely on here is when you're accountable, you honor your agreements. And accountability works with others, but it also works with yourself. Can you count on yourself? And what accountability does is when you honor agreements, you earn integrity. And when you earn integrity, you earn self-respect. And then you get respect from others, and that increases your energy. We've all had the experience of going to bed at night and saying, I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to exercise. This is an agreement. Now, when the alarm goes off at 6 o'clock, as my dad would say, it's mind over mattress. You don't change your agreement because you don't feel like it. And this is the difficulty in our life today. This is, in my mind, what has contributed to much of our mental health challenges, is that we've started to live our life in how we feel, not in what we agree to do. Because when you make an agreement, we've all done this. We've all put our feet in the floor in the morning, whether you feel like it or not. I'm going to get up and exercise, whether it's going to the gym or going for a walk or going for a run, whatever an exercise is for you. But you get up in the morning and you exercise. How do you feel an hour from now? You feel better about yourself. And we say that's the integrity from the exercise, the endorphins from the exercise. I'm going to argue that it's the endorphins from your personal integrity. Your integrity gives you self-respect and you feel better about yourself. Hey, I did something hard today. Covey would say it this way: a private victory precedes a public victory, but you're keeping your promises. Now, I'm not saying to have integrity or accountability that you have to exercise. Maybe you need more rest. Then sleep in and keep your integrity. But don't change your agreement midstream because you don't feel like keeping your agreement. You keep your agreement whether you feel like it or not. My whole premise is you act your way into right feelings. You don't feel your way into right actions. If you want different feelings in your life, take different actions, make different choices. If you want higher self-respect, don't do what's easy, do what you agreed to, and then make sure you choose carefully so that it's aligned with your values. Okay, that's the kind of the backdrop to my execution accountability process here. We all have a claim. This is what I want. This is what I claim to have, but then the reality sinks in. This is called New Year's resolutions. You have a claim. This is what I want to have accomplished this year. Well, you know what? Is it a dream? Is it just a wish? Or do you actually work at closing that integrity gap? Every time you have, and by the way, this is values in an organization. You got values on the wall, and then you have reality. You ever see a value statement on a wall in a hotel that says we put customers first? Then you talk to the clerk and you wonder, now you get reality. Did this person even read the value statement? So what's important is that you're working at closing that gap in self-respect. I know this from in the addictions field, that what addicts are recovering from is they're recovering their integrity. Because when you're caught in the grips of an addiction, you have no integrity. And so what the whole addiction movement is to create a program so that you have accountability to put the drug down, and that's what gives you self-respect. Close the gap with clear agreements and increase your self-respect. So here's my little formula for execution. And this is execution in an organization. It's execution in your life. But we're going to make it, we're going to keep it focused on your life. Agreements plus habits plus an accountability partner is what you execute. That's what execution is. So it's very important that you understand the difference in any execution process, to understand the difference between lead indicators and lag indicators. I know I'm giving you a lot of information. I'm giving you kind of the fire hose here. We can break it down and process it after. But the important thing is to realize the difference between lead and lag indicators. Any execution process understands this. So the simple example I can say is, let's suppose this year you want to lose 50 pounds. And that's your intention. I want to take care of my health and I want to get some weight off. Let's just suppose that I'm not telling you that should be your intention, but let's suppose that's your intention. The lag indicators is the scale. So that's 1 pound a week, 4 pounds a month. Those are lag indicators. And here's what we typically do. We have these lag indicators at the first of the year. I'm going to lose 1 pound a week. And then and I'm just going to eat less and exercise more without a clear definition. Those are lead indicators, but you don't identify those lead indicators. What happens is at the end of the week, you've gained 2 pounds. Oh, now you're hard on yourself. So, I'm going to work harder this week. And there's no integrity because there's no clarity. There's no clarity of an agreement. You're just going to work harder at it. And then the next week, you don't lose any weight. And then you're harder on yourself. It's like sales. If you're in sales, the lag indicator means I'm going to sell 10,000, let's say round it up, $12,000 a month in products. That means I have to sell $3,000 a week. You get to the end of the week. My goal is I'm going to sell $3,000 worth of products this week. You get to the end of the week and you're frustrated because you didn't hit your target because you don't have lead indicators. Lead indicators are the habits that you need to integrate into your life that will take you to your lag indicators. The end result are lag indicators, but the lead indicators are the habits that are required to put the lag indicators into place. So, for example, how many calories do you need to eat every day? How much exercise do you need to have every day? And then you turn those into habits. And then at the end of the week, you check your results. Hey, I lost a pound this week. I've got the right habits. This week, I didn't lose any weight. I need to change the habits because the lag indicators will give you an indication of whether your lead indicators are actually working. So let's take, for example, you want to build this year, your intention is to build a better relationship with your life partner, with your spouse. I want a better marriage. So the first thing is get a benchmark. So you could sit with your spouse and say, you know what, I want to work on this marriage. I want to do my part to work on this marriage. By the way, that's a topic for another day, marriage enrichment. But I would suggest you keep the focus on yourself. One of the key principles here is what can you do to be a better marriage partner, right? So you get an assessment from your spouse, from your partner. How do we define a good relationship? It's part of my values. It's part of my intentions. I want to have a better relationship with you. And I don't want to just set it as a New Year's resolution and say, I want to be better in my relationship. I want to really make a decision to make a change. Well, you get what a 1 would be, a terrible relationship. A 10 would be a great relationship. What do those mean to you? And what number do you have right now? So let's suppose that you work with your partner and you sit down and say, you know what, right now, it's a 3. And by the end of the year, I want to take it to a 6. Okay, what would that look like? Well, then you define and clarify your required habits, your lead indicators that are going to take you toward the 6. See, the 6 is a lag indicator and it's the end result, but your lead indicators are what are the habits that are going to take you there. So what are the habits? Weekly dates. Every week, we're going to schedule a date. And I'm going to ask you how your life has been since we talked last. We're going to have a daily check-in. We're going to have a cup of coffee in the morning for 10 minutes in the morning, just before we get off to work in our busy lives together. We're just going to do a little check-in with each other. We're going to have a daily inventory. I'm going to take a daily inventory of the apologies that are needed. An apology isn't just an empty, I'm sorry, but it's a commitment to change. And so there's a whole process behind what an apology might look like, right? And then you make an agreement with an accountability partner along with a request for support. So you find an accountability partner to say, and I have never known anybody to make long-term changes without some kind of an accountability partner, somebody that will support you and hold your toe to the fire. If you're really serious about changing, find somebody that you can bring into your life. So find a good friend to say, you know what? I want to have a better marriage and I need your help with it. And this is how you can help hold me accountable. This is how you can help support me. And you make a decision to make that relationship better. Now, you can do this in any area in your life. Just make sure that it's aligned with your values and the kind of quality of life that you want to develop in your life. So I just share with you my own lead and lag indicators in the next year. I want to write a book, find an academy partner, and make space in my life. What does that look like in terms of the lead indicators? These are lag indicators, by the way. This is how I will measure success at the end of the year, but I have to integrate. I have to do exactly what I'm talking about here. I have to, in the next year, integrate some habits. So first of all, I've already, and by the way, I'm swamped with work in January, and I'm right until about the middle of February, but I booked from going forward here. I've booked 9 hours a week of what I call deep work. Now, this is Cal Newport's term that I really align with. Basically, it's writing time that I will be focused. I'm going to withdraw from the world for 9 hours a week. I'm going to sit in front of my computer and do nothing but write. And I won't answer emails. I will be unavailable. It's what we call monk mode. I'm just going to withdraw from the world for 9 hours a week for the next year. And I know enough about myself to know that right now I have about 2 or 3 chapters kind of mapped out. I've got a little bit of an outline mapped out, but I know that by the end of the year, I will have a book. But the book will come from the habit of structuring time, to have undivided focus to write that book. 1 hour a week of research. And during that research, I'm going to be researching organizations that might hire me to do a public workshop for them. I'm going to be researching people. I'm going to be researching publishers. I'm going to be researching agents and pitch my work to some agents that we need, because my publisher is kind of winding down now, and so I need to. This is an area that I need to. That's the habit that I'm going to have, is to have 1 hour of research. I'm going to build a structure with Marg, my vice president of client care, who does my scheduling, my business scheduling, as well as Val, who does my personal schedule, to develop a structure to create space in my year, so that I have space to hang out with my grandkids. My grandson is graduating this year in the States. He's going to state champion. I'm going to get down there to spend time with him. I'm going to make time to spend with my daughter in Ottawa and their little one, Juno. So that's structure that I'm going to put into my schedule. And then visualize success. Every day I'm going to visualize finding a partner. I'm going to use the power of visualization. So I let go, and I don't have to worry. I don't have to be stressed. I'm only going to execute those habits, those agreements that I have with myself. Okay. Then I'm going to make an agreement with myself and my accountability partner. I have an accountability partner that's going to help me in these areas. Val will be my accountability partner in some areas, but there's also a colleague that I'm going to bring in to be as an accountability partner, along with a request for support, just exactly what I've been talking about, so that we're going to work together at creating the life that I intend to build on this year. And it's going to, the end result is going to be, I'm going to be more relaxed. I'm going to be more focused. I'm going to have a life of integrity. We all get off, folks. It's like, the whole notion of heading to the moon. When they put a man on the moon in 1969, they were off course about 99% of the time, but they had a computer to bring them back continually. We're going to get off the mark, but we keep coming back to it. Okay. The other thing around an intentional life is that you constantly want to prune the clutter. Pruning is a part of life. Fewer projects, fewer tasks, fewer endeavors, fewer distractions, less clutter, saying no to the wrong opportunities. This is all part of a disciplined approach to an intentional life. What do you need to say no to make room? I can tell you, if I schedule 9 hours a week to write, I'm going to have to say no to some things, and it's going to test. This will be a big rock, some sand here. All this list on the right is all sand that's not going to fit into this particular jar this year. Okay. So in conclusion, folks, I just want to say, if you do nothing else, if you learn nothing else, I'll just leave you one last thought. And that is, we all have to-do lists. I think we all understand the importance of to-do lists. What I'm going to offer to you is a to-be list. Is how do you want to be in the world? And that is in itself living an intentional life. And so if I had a to-be list today, I'd have 3 things on my list. I'd have be honest, be generous, and be kind, which means, you know what? I'm going to be honest with myself. Now, there's 2 kind of levels of honesty. There's cash register honesty, in terms of the honesty in my dealings with people. But there's also emotional honesty, where I need to be honest about my struggles, my fears, my challenges, my setbacks, where I missed the mark, my insecurities. I need to have a community around me that I'm going to stay honest with people in my life. I'm going to be generous, and I'm going to be kind, and I'm going to miss the mark. And what I often say is around generosity and granting ourselves grace, dwell as near as possible to the channel in which our life flows. And there's no straight lines in nature. We're not going to get this thing perfect. It's a structure. Let's work within that structure and define ourselves not by how well we live the structure. The structure is simply there so that we can really be present and enjoy our lives. If that doesn't happen, what's the point of all of this? Let's not define our life by how well we reach our goals and how well we set the structure up. That's not what life is. Life is messy, it's crooked, and it's imperfect. And so what we want to do, what I certainly want to do, is create a life so that the structure enables me to just simply live life fully. We do have a SAGE program that we'll talk to you about. I think Ken's on the call today, our SAGE facilitator. We'll talk to you more about the SAGE program. It's if you need support with this, we have a structure to help you out. If you feel like you need some help, we are there to give you some support with living your life in alignment with these principles that I've talked about. If we can support you in any way, please reach out. There's my personal email address, and of course, my website, which many of you are familiar with. Folks, that's it for my presentation today. I'm going to shut her down at this point. I'm going to turn off the share.